Hello and welcome back to this channel. So in today's tutorial, we're going to do a little bit of a different thing. That is, we're going to try and draw a landscape in Adobe Fresco. So let's just get started. So I picked up a photograph from Unsplash and I'm going to use that as a reference. So I just made a quick sketch out of it. So I'll be sharing this sketch. So don't forget to go ahead and download this one. I'll also share the color palette so that you don't have to really worry about picking right colors. Okay, so let's go back to home screen and I'm going to click on small postcard. If you want to use a bigger artboard, go ahead and use it. You just have to resize the sketch as soon as you bring it in. So let's go to our images, go to photos and bring in our sketch and color palette. Once the sketch is here, click on done, click on levels. Let's reduce the opacity and make this into multiply. Let's go ahead and bring the color palette now. Click on done. Now I'm just going to go ahead and choose each color and make a mark on my artboard. Once you're ready, you can see all these colors under recents. Now let's go ahead and delete off the layer where we made the marks and hide the color palette. So the whole idea behind this landscape is that this part of the mountain is going to get reflected exactly below here. If you notice correctly, I haven't drawn the reflection at all. That's because we're not going to be drawing any of the reflected part, but we'll use the transform tool to create some magic or make our lives a little easier. So let's go ahead and start drawing. And the first thing that I'm going to draw is the sky. So before we jump into it, let me quickly show you what are the brushes that I'm going to be using. So we'll mainly use pixel brushes here, and then I'm going to use the smudge tool as well to give the reflection a characteristic of a reflection, I guess. Okay, so in pixel brushes, my main brushes are going to be under painting. And in here, I'll be using the canvas brush flat. If you see that I've already highlighted it so that it shows up in my favorites, I would recommend that you do that as well, because then it'll be very easy to just go into favorites and pick out your brush. And I'll also be using Cezanne or Cezanne, I don't know how that's pronounced, but 1 and 2. I guess one of these two brushes depending on how it looks on the screen. So I have already put them here in my favorites. So okay, it says on 1, canvas brush flat and canvas brush. So these three are the main brushes, and I don't know why I have Blair. We'll figure out if we're going to use it or not, but that also comes under this painting brush itself. Okay, for smudging brushes, I have picked out flat brush mixer and bushy mixer. That again comes under mixer brushes. So you'll see here flat brush mixer and bushy mixer. So you can just click and then click on that star button here, and then it'll show up in your favorites, and that's pretty easy. Okay, let's go ahead and go to our canvas brush flat, because that's what we're going to use for most of the painting. And I'm going to go ahead and choose the blue color here for my sky. You need to create a new layer below the sketch layer. So I'm just going to click here, and if you don't have it, click on the plus. Let's talk about this canvas brush flat. So the main thing with this brush is if you apply it lightly, you can see the texture coming through of a canvas. But if you apply it very, with a lot of pressure, then it's just a normal painting that is happening here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and draw the whole. Let me just increase this, not so much, about 2. Let me check. Yeah, this is fine, 228. Don't touch any of the flow settings or your smoothing settings. It's all set to whatever default settings. So I'm just going to undo. You can use your 2-finger tap to do that. And I'll just draw the sky. I'm putting a light thing in, but I'll go ahead and make it a little darker. So by the way, if you want your sky to be a little bit brighter, choose a better blue. So I could go ahead and just move this here and just move this a little bit this side. And then you can see you'll get a completely different blue. Maybe we're going to go ahead and try that, because I think why not? Don't worry about the mountains. It's okay if you go onto the mountains, it doesn't matter. All right, so my sky is ready and I like it, and now it's time to draw the clouds. Let's go ahead and click on new layer, and I'm going to go to this brush again, and I'll click on canvas detail. And for clouds, we're gonna use 3 different colors. That is, we will use white, this one, then we'll use a really pale blue, and then we'll use somewhat grayish color. So I'm just going to click on white now to make some, areas. So now you have your canvas brush. This is so tiny. So let's increase that. And a little more. And I'll change the flow to 100 because I want it a little dark. So this should be okay. As you can see, I'm not really drawing any particular way. Like I'm just scribbling here. Just marking the areas where I want my clouds to be. So if you want, I can add this to the sketch as well so that you know where I'm drawing things. So let's do that. And make sure you bring some here out of the box and some peeping down here like that. Okay, I think that our clouds are okay now. That should be okay. And now let's go ahead and click on the pale blue that we have. And now we're going to go ahead and add some shadows to it by making sure. So this is your, let me just show you properly. I am going to create a new layer and I will use a vector brush to show you what I'm doing exactly. Let me take this black or blue. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and draw with my canvas brush a rough shape which looks like, a bit of cotton everywhere. And then I'm going to choose a blue, that is the pale blue, and going to add only in these areas. Like I'm not going to do a continuous this area. No, I'm just going to add some here maybe, but only to the bottom of the cloud and nothing else, no top. You're going to leave the top as it is. So you just add some bottom things. You're going to add some cotton kind of texture there. And after that, we're going to select a gray since, okay, I'll just choose some gray. Just imagine this is the gray we are using. And then we'll go ahead and add some gray again to the bottommost part, but we're not going to cover the whole of blue as well. So we'll just do something like this so that it's really at the bottom of the cloud. But sometimes we'll go ahead and add some gray in here as well so that you'll create some kind of a texture to the cloud. Okay, I know it sounds confusing, but trust me, it's not. When you're done with your cloud, you'll be so proud of it. I guarantee you that. So let's uncheck that and draw our cloud. So let's go ahead here. So now let's go ahead and take the pale blue and make sure you go to your canvas detail brush. And I'm going to add a little bit of structure here. As you can see, I'm not adding too much. I know it's hard to notice or figure out in this, but I'm really trying so that you guys can see it. You can reduce the size of the brush so that you don't mess up. Let me just add some here to this mountain. Some here as well. And obviously this one, it's a major cloud. Little bit here. Okay, now it's time for some gray. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the light gray that we have. So now let's go ahead and try to put in some gray, but this is too big, I think. So I'm just going to go ahead and reduce the size to a bit like that. And don't add a lot. So make sure that you add a little bit of gray here and there. Not too much. You see how I'm adding it here? Here and here. And let's add some here as well. Okay. A cloud is coming through, but it's not exactly pretty right now, right? So it's okay, it happens. So I'll just add a bit here because this is a really huge cloud. I'm sure it has a lot of, tiny clouds in between. Okay, now we'll go back to our white and change our brush to Cezanne 1. And let me just quickly check how big this is. This is too tiny, so we need to increase the size. Maybe about 140. Let me just quickly check. This looks good. And now I'm going to go ahead to the top of the cloud. Make sure you don't go to the bottom part of it. And just add some white marks. So maybe make sure that you're at the most whitemost thing and your flow is set to 100 because we want really white clouds like this. And I just want to say that don't get discouraged if you don't get it at first shot. It took me a really long time to master these things as well. So if you even do a decent job at a cloud, you should pat yourself on the back. And let's add some white here as well. Going to go ahead and do that. And maybe a little bit here because I want a bit of a white peeping out. There's too many clouds in the sky today. All right, I think our sky is ready. At least I'm happy with it. You can actually go back to the layer where you did the background of the sky and fill in that thing if you want, like click like that, and you can go back to your canvas brush flat. And if you feel like, oh, I would like this to be, you know, completely filled with blue, go ahead and do that. That's why we make it in different layers so that we don't get stuck later. All right, it's time for the mountains now, which is like the easiest part of this illustration because we're going to be using the selection tool for this. Because with the canvas brushes that we have, you don't really get crispy edges, and I like crispy edges. So let's go ahead and go on top of the cloud layer and click on new layer. And we'll start off by, I don't know, you can start with the background or with the foreground. It's totally up to you. And our illustration would be such that the ones which are closer to us, these big mountains, are going to have darker color compared to the ones which are in the background. That's because maybe the sun is in the background and it reflects light and stuff like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and pick up the lightest blue that we have, which is not the one which we applied for the sky. I think it's this one. Let me just quickly draw. Yeah, that should be it. So let's go ahead and take our selection tool, and my mountain here is going to be somewhat here like that. Oh, by the way, make sure you're in this selection tool and nothing else. And I want this one to be that color as well. Okay, and let's go back here, and I'm going to use the canvas brush flat. You can use any brush you want. It's really not, and I'm just going to color it like this. So you can reduce the size if you want, and I will just color it completely. And once you're done, you can click deselect. Now go to a different layer, and we'll do the same thing for the next mountain. In this layer, I want this one to have that color. And next you can go to your brush, color palette. The next best color is supposed to be, I think, this one. Let's check it out and color. Now deselect, and I'm going to go ahead and on the same layer, I'll just select this one and use the same color and draw like this. But I'm going to go ahead and choose a little darker color, maybe this one, and add a bit to the edge here so that it kind of tells you that these two are different mountains. So if you go ahead and uncheck the sketch, oops, not that, this one, and you should see something like, okay, let's turn on the sketch again and go back to this mountain, click on new, and we'll do these two right now. So go ahead and do that. And I'll do this big one. Okay, and obviously I need a darker color, the color that I chose already, and go to your brush and let's color this. That looks good. Deselect, maybe uncheck this. Now let's go back to the older layer, and I want to add a new layer here. Okay, because I have to fill this one first. So I'm just going to go to the selection tool, and I'm going to take something which is a little darker than this one, but lighter than this. No, this is still not my ideal color. So let's do like that. Okay, this looks better. And click on deselect. Okay, next the topmost layer, or not really, there's one more left, right? So let's go ahead and choose. Okay, and then we have something like a grayish blue, and let's paint that off. You can leave some texture if you want. And deselect, and now I'll go to one more layer and draw the next one. So let's go ahead here, and this is, you can actually not use a selection tool but just use the brush. Let's do that. Let's try it out. Okay, let's go to the color, and I'm going to choose the next darker color, and go to your brush. And if you feel canvas brush flat is too much, you can use the canvas brush. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw something like this. Don't worry, we'll erase this off. If you feel it's too flat, I feel it's too flat for this. Doesn't work. What about Blair? Maybe Blair works. Let's do the same thing here as well. You can reduce the size to give it some funky edges. I'm just going to uncheck the sketch to see how it looks like. That's okay. That's fine. I can work with it. Okay, next, let's check the darkest black that we have. And I'll choose a new layer. And I'm going to add some trees kind of a thing here. So let me reduce that. And, you know, just scribble, scribble, scribble. Make sure you cover that bottommost sketch line because this is really important. That looks good. And now we have to clear off the bottommost layer. So I'm going to go to the sketch layer and increase the opacity so that I can see what's happening. So now let's go to the topmost layer, and in here you can actually see the line here. So let's go to the eraser tool and make sure that you keep it as small as possible so that you can control it. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw on the sketch line. So don't worry about going beyond the sketch line right now. It's okay, you can fix it later on as well. So I think I'll go to the next one here and then do that first. So alternate between both of these and make sure you clear off all the excess that you have. It actually doesn't matter much. You don't have to be so careful because in the end we are reflecting stuff and it's not going to be so visible. All right, so that's okay, but there's some blue here, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the blue layer and delete that off as well. Okay, so I think this looks good. Let me go ahead and uncheck the sketch layer to make sure it looks fine. Okay, everything looks good except there's some problem here. So we're going to go ahead and fix that. So what we can do is we can just go to the layer which has the mountain and then click and hold to get that color. Go to your tool and then just draw in so that you can cover that area. Be careful so that you don't go outside the box. And since we are on that layer, it's not going to show up anywhere else, so it will be fine. I think it looks good, but I don't like these mountains there because I don't know, they don't look as great, right? So let's go ahead to those mountains. Where are you? Okay, here they are. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and so now click and create mask layer contents, and then make sure it's on reveal, by the way, and swipe it so that you go on to the actual layer that you have. And let's go ahead and actually choose this color, and we're going to go ahead and make it a little darker, I guess, or bluer, something like that. And go to your brush again and then just draw. Okay, now they look much better. So yeah, you can stop here. You can make your artwork so that there's no reflection or anything. But I think it would be nice to actually reflect this. So now what we're going to do is group things together. That is really, really important. So let's select and click on select multiple. Now we'll select all the mountains and the clouds and the sky. And then you can click on this folder icon so that they get grouped together. Now click and click on duplicate layer group. So now it creates a new layer group, which is actually the duplicate of that. So click on transform. And now we're going to click on this particular thing, that is flipping it upside down like this. And now we'll slowly move this so that this comes and sits directly below our layer. Be a little careful. You can use these arrows here to kind of figure out how to get there. That looks good. Click on done. It's okay, continue. Now that you can see that you have a perfect reflection, but obviously we'll have to make some changes. So we'll be working only on the bottom part of this illustration and not on the top part. So make sure of that. But before that, I want to draw a subtle line across so that you get to know which is the actual reflection and which is not. So click on the darkest black that you have, and I'm going to go ahead and go to my canvas brush, but I will really reduce the size of this one. You can also choose a little lighter, usually a little grayer, so that there's an idea of what's happening. Something like that. So make sure you put it on a new layer so that you don't have to worry about messing up your other layers. Okay, now let's go ahead and create some effect which feels like, okay, it's not the real thing, it's actually a reflection. So now let's go to this group over here, and I'm going to click and duplicate again. The reason I'm doing is this because I don't want to mess up the layers. So I'll just keep that and uncheck it. So it's going to be there safe and sound. Click on the duplicated layer, double click on it so that it goes inside the layer. And now you have all these layers. Click on select multiple and select all these layers. And click again and click on merge selected. Now everything is in one single layer. So if as you can see. So let's go ahead and work on this. You should be on this layer. Now let's go to the smudge tool. And under smudge tool, I showed you the two brushes that I'm going to be using. I'll use the flat brush mixer, and it's set at 64. I don't know if it's right. Let me check that. And strength is at 50. I guess it should be okay. And just draw some lines like this, just to create a subtle effect. But then again, you can actually increase this to make it a little more blurry, especially this part, I think needs to be a bit blurry. And the next thing is you can also go ahead and click on bushy mixer and then create some lines, which creates like a, don't go all the way there, like ripple effect kind of a thing. And don't overdo it. So just a slight effect to show that the water is below, but you don't have to really do this. It still looks like it is water and there is kind of reflection happening. Okay, so that's it. That brings us to the end of this tutorial, and I hope you really liked it. I know I picked a really simple landscape because I didn't want to overwhelm you guys with lots of things happening and stuff like that. I thought we could start really slow. I'll make more landscape painting videos with Adobe Fresco because that's something I do a lot. If you enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button as well. And don't forget the notification bell because you want to be notified every time I post a new video. I hope you create something wonderful, and please go ahead and choose any color scheme that you want. This is like a cool color scheme, but you could also use warm autumn colors or winter colors with snow and stuff like that as well to use. So go ahead and experiment with that. And if you do create something, don't forget to tag me at my Instagram, that is at print me some color. That's the same name as this YouTube channel, and I've loved to show it off to people because I find it really, I don't know, it makes me really happy when you guys create something from one of my tutorials. Okay, I guess I'll see you in the next video then. Bye bye.